Welcome back to the Conveyance Desk. In episode 9, we covered joint ownership, multiple buyers and multiple sellers. Today is episode 10, and this one is about closing day. What actually happens at the trustee, the order of events, and what each party should bring and expect. Quick reminder, this is general educational content, not legal advice. Every transfer is variables, developer rules, financing terms, authority requirements. So use this as a guide, then validate your own case. Here is the framing. By the time closing day arrives, the bulk of the work is done. Documents prepared, NOC issued, bank approvals secured, checks ready, appointments confirmed. Closing day is the execution window, not the work window, but execution still has its own choreography, and knowing the choreography reduces stress on the day. 1. The morning before. A well-managed transfer has a morning of confirmation before the appointment. Checks in hand, all originals collected, all parties confirmed to attend. Appointment time confirmed by the trustee office. Travel and parking arranged for everyone. This is not a checklist for the trustee staff. This is a checklist for whoever is managing the transfer. Because if any of these is wrong on the morning of, the appointment slot is at risk. The morning of is not the time to discover that a check is in the wrong name. That is the time to confirm everything is right. Discovery should have happened days earlier. 2. Arrival. All parties arrive at the trustee office at the appointed time. Buyer side and seller side, or their representatives with valid POAs. Identification is checked, attendance is logged. The file is reviewed by the trustee officer. If anything is missing at this stage, the appointment does not proceed, the slot is forfeited, and rebooking takes time. So arriving on time and complete is not optional. It is the entire point. We always advise arriving 15 minutes early. Not because the trustee will see you earlier, because if anything is missing, you have a small window to retrieve it before the slot is called. 3. Document verification. The trustee officer verifies the file. Title deed, NOC, sale and purchase agreement, buyer and seller identification, POs if applicable, with full attestation chain, mortgage discharge documents if applicable, new mortgage documents if the buyer is financing, checks in the correct names and amounts. This verification can take time, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes longer, depending on the complexity of the file. This is not delay. This is the trustee doing the job correctly. A fast verification means a clean file. A slow verification means the trustee is finding things to question, and questions during verification can derail the appointment. 4. The fee payment. Government fees and trustee fees are paid at this stage, usually by a card in the appointment room. Fees include the DLD transfer fee, typically 4% of the property value, the trustee fee, administration fees, mortgage registration fees, if applicable. The buyer pays most of these in standard transactions, but the contract can allocate fees differently if both parties agreed. This is one of the few cash points in the process, and it is straightforward as long as the card has the limit available. A card declined in the appointment room is an avoidable embarrassment. Confirm with the bank in advance that the limit is sufficient. 5. The check exchange. This is the moment that defines the transaction. The buyer hands over the manager's checks to the seller. The checks are issued in the seller's name and any other required payees. The seller verifies the checks. The trustee officer logs the exchange. If the checks are correct, the transaction proceeds. If any check is wrong, the appointment pauses, and in some cases, must be rebooked. This is why episode 5 was about banks and checks. The whole transfer pivots on this moment. A check in the wrong name, a check for the wrong amount, a check from the wrong bank account. Any of these can stop the transfer at the check exchange. 6. The signature. Once the check exchange is verified, the parties sign. Buyer and seller, or their attorneys under POA. The signature transfers ownership. At that moment, legally, the buyer becomes the owner. The seller is no longer the owner. The DLD records are updated. The new title deed is issued, usually electronically. The buyer receives a copy. The transaction is complete. This part is fast. By the time the signing happens, all the work is behind you. The signing itself takes minutes. 7. The handover. The handover is technically separate from the transfer, but it usually happens immediately after or on the same day. Keys are handed over, access cards are transferred, utility account information is exchanged. The seller provides any documents the buyer needs for ongoing matters. In some cases, the handover happens at the property itself rather than the trustee. That is fine, but it should be planned, not improvised on the day. A handover at the property gives the buyer a chance to inspect. That is valuable. Both parties should agree the handover timing in advance, not negotiate it after the checks have changed hands. At the first hours after transfer. The first hours after a transfer matter for the buyer. Utilities should be transferred or activated. Access to the building should be confirmed with security. The community management should be notified. Insurance should be activated if not already in place. A new owner who arrives at their property and cannot enter is a frustrated owner. Plan the post-transfer logistics. Do not assume they will sort themselves out. For sellers, the first hours are about banking the checks. Managers' checks are typically deposited or cashed quickly. A delay in banking is a delay in the seller having their funds available. 9. Closing. Closing day looks dramatic from a distance, but by the time it happens, it should feel routine. Because if the work was done right beforehand, there are no surprises. The checks are correct. The documents are complete. The parties are present. The appointment runs in under 2 hours. And ownership transfers cleanly. That is the goal, a boring closing. A dramatic closing means something was not handled in time. In the next episode, we will cover the post-transfer period. What happens after closing? And what new owners need to know in their first 90 days. That's all for today. This was the Conveyance Desk.